Hi everyone. For those of you that are here a little bit early, just wanted to say hello, and I'm also testing out my microphone, so I'm hoping that you can hear me. If you would like to say hello or introduce yourself or let me know where you're listening from or ask a question, you can do that using the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. It's not a public box. So the others who are here at the webinar today won't be able to see your comments, but I'll be able to see them. And I also have a coworker who's coming online soon, and she will be able to see them as well. So I can see Shinchao and Evgenia and Sham Sundar already saying hello. So hello to you, and also Freema Lin, who's been chatting with me already. And Luis, hello. So I'm here in Vancouver, Canada, so I'm always curious to know where others are. So if you want to let me know, if you're listening from somewhere far away or somewhere interesting or even somewhere close by, you can let me know where you are. I'm going to turn my microphone off once again. I'll probably come back in a few minutes and say hi one more time because it's just going to be a large group. So we'll have lots of new people coming online shortly and we will officially start at 9:30. So that's about 12 minutes from now. So if you can hear me, that's great. That means your audio should be working for the session, and you can just hang out and relax until we get started in about 12 minutes. Hi again, everybody. Just checking in one more time before we start. So it's 9:25. We have 5 more minutes to wait. We'll get started right at 9:30 Vancouver time. Just wanted to say hello and check in with those of you who are signing in. Um, if you can hear me now, that means your audio settings are good to go and you should be good for the session. If you like, you can feel free to say hello in that questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. My coworker and I will be able to see your comments. It's not a public chat box, so the others who are here in attendance today won't be able to see it, but we'll be able to see it and respond. So hello to some new sign-in people. We have April Grace, Samnong, and Hanye, welcome back, and Christian, and Doggy Janchiv, I probably pronounced that wrongly. And Luana, good morning. And Luis, hello. So I'm going to turn off my mic just for about another 4 minutes, and then we will get started right on time at 9:30. Okay, so it is 9:30. Welcome to all of you. We already have 110 people here with us today, and I think we're going to have even more than that. So it's going to be an extremely big group today, and we have lots of information to cover. So let's get going. First of all, just as a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, you maybe have noted that your microphone is muted. We have to have the participants on mute because there are so many of you, it wouldn't be possible to have everybody able to talk whenever they want. So I'm going to be on the mic today and you guys can listen. If you have any comments or questions, I'm going to be asking you some questions. So anything like that, use the questions box that is in your GoToWebinar control panel. And anything you type into that box, I'll be able to see it. And I also am very grateful that I have a coworker here today, Brandy, and she will also be able to read your comments. So one of us will respond, hopefully, to your comments and questions. We try to answer all the questions. We do our best, but in a big group like this, you might have to wait a few minutes. So just be patient, hang in there, and we're gonna do our best to get to everybody. Hopefully your sound and your screen are gonna work great, but if you do have any issues with your tech, the first thing to do is just wait. It's very common to have a few seconds here and there where maybe you can't hear any audio, it cuts out. Usually it'll just come back and it'll be fine. If it cuts out and it doesn't come back or something else happens that isn't right, you can log out and log back into the session. And also when you log back in, try using Chrome as your browser if you weren't already doing that, because GoToWebinar recommends that as the best browser to use with their platform. Have a paper and pen handy for notes. If you want to have the authentic experience, we're going to do some sample speaking questions today. And part of that is your prep time, where you have the opportunity to make some notes for yourself. So for taking notes about the session, but also for participating in those sample responses, you can have paper and a pen ready. And also a recording device if you have a phone or if you can record on your computer. I will not be able to listen to any recordings that you make today. That's not going to work because there's way too many people here. But you will have a recording. If you record yourself speaking, first of all, it makes the experience more real. So you get a real feeling of how it will be on the test. And also you'll have that recording and you can go back and listen to it later, even make yourself a transcript if you want, and you can use the performance standards that we look at in a minute to see how you're doing according to that chart. After the session today, about an hour after we end, you're going to receive an email. And that email is going to have many things in it that hopefully will be useful to you. One will be a link to a survey that you are welcome to fill out if you have any feedback for us. The other link will be to the study materials for the session, and that includes all of the sample responses that we listened to. There'll be audio files there, all of the analysis of the sample responses, and lots of the strategies and the tips that we talk about today. So that is going to link you up with some hopefully very helpful stuff that you can use in your own preparation. The last thing in that email is going to be the video of today's session. So this webinar right now is being recorded and it will be included as a recording in your email. So if you need to leave early, if you take a break, if you want to see a slide again and I go past it, wait for the video and you'll be able to watch it as many times as you want whenever you like. Okay, so this is me. My name is Megan, and I've been chatting with some of you just before we got started, talking to you about where you're from and where you're living. So I was born in Saskatchewan, so I'm from Regina, but I lived in Calgary for about 8 years, and now I've lived in Vancouver for about 10 years. So I've been around the western kind of part of Canada and done quite a lot of education. I'm really into languages and writing and teaching. So those are kind of my three things that I like the most. And I'm very happy that I get to talk to you about all of those things here today. Something else is that I was a CELPIP writing rater for about 5.5 years before I started working at this position. So I read about 30,000 CELPIP writing responses during that time. So I wrote this presentation. Um, Sometimes that's not the case with our webinars, but in this case, I actually wrote the slides, and I hope that I will be able to help you feel more confident and feel more comfortable getting ready for this part. Oh, this is speaking. Sorry, I was talking about writing. Yeah, I did not write the slides for this one. We have Writing Pro in a couple days, and I was thinking about that. No, my coworker John wrote the slides for this one, but I'm still confident that I can help you get ready for the speaking test. So let's keep going. Oh, one thing I do want to mention before we start, I am working from home, as we all are here at the company, and I'm expecting an important package today, and I don't know when it's going to come. It might come during this webinar. I hope it doesn't. But if it does, I'm going to have to run downstairs for 1 minute and sign so I can get my package. So if I disappear very suddenly for 1 minute, that's what's happening. And I apologize for that if it happens. I really hope it doesn't, but I don't get to decide when my mail comes today. So hopefully it won't interrupt us. Okay, so today's webinar, first of all, we're going to talk about the speaking test in general, kind of how it looks and what's all included in it. We are going to focus today on tasks 1 through 4. So tomorrow with Brandy, there's a second lesson of Speaking Pro Target 9, and that is where you can learn and practice tasks 5 through 8. So today we're just going to do the first 4, and we will finish off with a look at some of our study products that we have available, some free things and some paid things as well. So this slide that you're seeing now is an overall look at the 8 speaking tasks on the test. And you may notice here at the top middle that there is something called task 0, which is a practice task. It's not scored. It will always come right at the beginning of the test. And it's just there for the purpose of testing your equipment and kind of warming yourself up. It's optional. You don't have to do it. Nobody will listen to it. We'll talk about it more in a second. But you'll notice that the preparation time over toward the right-hand part of the chart, the preparation time column, that tells you how much time you have to prepare before the recording starts and you have to start speaking. So for most of the questions, you can see that it is 30 seconds. And for all the questions we're going to talk about today, parts 1 through 4, it's 30 seconds. The speaking time, we have, so going into task 5 and also task 6, which will be covered in tomorrow's lesson, you have a little bit more prep time. So that will be helpful. But for all of today's tasks, it's a 30-second preparation time. Over on the far right, you can see that the speaking time is 60 seconds for almost all of the questions. So most of the questions you talk for 1 minute. There are 2 exceptions. One is task 1 and the other is task 7. And for those 2 tasks, you'll speak for 90 seconds. So that's an extra 30 seconds there. So the very first task is a 90-second speaking time. So now you can see what the speaking question is going to look like on the test. So in this case, what you're looking at is the practice task. And remember that that is not going to be scored. It is not part of your speaking score. It's there to warm up, get yourself speaking. Speaking is the last part of the CELPIP test. So you will have been in the testing room and being quiet and just kind of answering questions and listening and reading. And now this is your speaking time. So you might want to use this opportunity just to warm up your voice and also to test your equipment. Make sure that your microphone is working. So let's have a look at some of the features on this screen. First of all, you can see the question itself now outlined in red. This is where you will always find the question. And you want to make sure you read the whole question. It might have more than one part. This one is fairly simple, as the practice tasks usually are. but some of the other questions on the test will be longer. They'll have more parts to them. So you want to make sure you always read those instructions in blue. The next important thing here is this box in the middle of the screen, and that is telling you your preparation time. It's going to count down usually from 30 seconds because that's usually how much preparation time you have, and that is the same for this practice task. It's going to count from 30 down to 0. When it ends, the screen will automatically move forward. So you don't have to do anything, just wait, and the screen's going to move forward automatically. And that's when your recording time will begin. Here up in the top right is where you can check how much time you have to prepare and how much time you have to speak for that particular speaking question. That's always throughout the entire test where you can check your timing. It won't be a surprise to you because all of the timing is available. You can learn all of that information before you go to the test. So it won't surprise you that for task 1 you have 30 seconds of prep time and 90 seconds to record. But just in case you forget, and also for some of the tasks where the clock counts down, that's where you're going to find that information. Lastly, there's always going to be a next button on your screen. And this next button is never necessary to press, so you never need to click next. Anytime you're doing a timed task, the screen will move forward automatically at the end of that time. So when your time runs out, it's going to move forward. You don't need to do anything. However, sometimes in certain parts of the test, you may want to move forward faster than the screen is going to automatically. Maybe you are doing a reading passage and you just read it really fast and you answer all the questions and you're extremely confident about your answers and you don't want to wait around for 2 more minutes. You want to go straight to the next part. You can click next in that case. The thing with next is that there's no back button. So once you move forward, you cannot go back. Another thing with the next button is that you don't carry forward any time with you. So you can't say, do your reading part really fast and have 2 minutes left and then bring that 2 minutes into the speaking part and now you have 2 extra minutes to prepare. That's not how it works. You don't bank your time. The only thing that's going to happen if you click next is that the test will be that much shorter for you. So I personally don't think there's ever a reason to click next during the speaking part of the test. Everybody wants their whole preparation time, right? Nobody wants to skip that. And everyone should speak for their whole speaking time. So there's not going to be any reason to click next during the speaking test, I don't think. But we like to let you know that it's there. Once your prep time runs out, it's going to move forward automatically. The screen will look now like this, and you can see that it's similar but a little bit different. So now what you have is a microphone icon that is moving up and down, and you also have a blue bar that is starting white and it's going to turn blue over time. So that blue bar is going to get bigger and it's going to move across the screen and it's showing that your recording time is passing. And when it gets to the end, when that bar is completely blue, that means that your speaking time is complete. So it's not going to be continuing to record. The recording will cut off once that recording time is up. That microphone icon with the little gray bar moving up and down, that's how you can tell that your microphone is working, that it's picking up your voice and that it's loud enough. So that is something to watch, especially during the practice task would be a good time to just say something and see how that bar moves up and down, because it just kind of will make you feel confident that your voice is being recorded. So you want to make sure that that bar is happening. If you're talking and that microphone icon is entirely white and that gray bar never comes, that's a sign that maybe something is wrong with your microphone. And honestly, that rarely happens. That's not something that is very likely to happen to you. If it does, if you don't see that gray bar, raise your hand at the test center. They will come and check for you. And if they need to, they'll replace your microphone. but again, that is not a common experience, so you really don't have much to worry about here. So now let's talk about scoring, and specifically the speaking performance standards. This is the things the raters think about when they are scoring and rating your speaking responses. So speaking raters are very carefully and extensively trained. Speaking raters will only listen to and evaluate speaking. So writing raters are a different group of people. Nobody is able to see any other part of the test. So a speaking rater cannot see your scores for writing or listening or reading. They cannot see that information. They even can't see other ratings that are given to you by other speaking raters. So the only information they have is the question that you answered and your response to it. And then they rate different aspects of that. So these are the 4 categories that they rate. And for each response, the rater is going to rate each of these 4 categories. And you can see them listed down the left-hand side of the chart under the column called dimension. So the first dimension is called content and coherence. The question here is, how well are your ideas organized and developed? So this dimension is all about your content. Your content is very important. It's not just simply a grammar test or a pronunciation test. What you say is very important, just as important as the way that you say it. So you want to make sure that you have a good number of different ideas. You want to avoid repeating ideas. You want to try to have ideas that are of good quality. And what that means is that they are maybe a little bit complex, that they are meaningful, that they are specific, and that they're expressed very clearly. That would be a good quality idea. So if you're talking about an experience you had and you say something like, I played hockey with my friend, that's not a very complex or developed idea, right? You want to say where and who and when, and you want to include details that really help to make the idea as clear as possible. And you want to do that throughout your speaking as much as you can. Your idea should be organized, and there's different ways to organize a response. Often you're going to want to have a certain number of main ideas and then develop each one by one. You can signal a new idea using a transition word like firstly and secondly, or also and then. Words like that that help to show that you're moving on to a new idea are very helpful with organization. Examples and supporting details are the last factor here. So the rater's going to think about, are your main ideas supported? Can they identify the main ideas of your response? And was there information to support those main ideas? The type of information will depend on the type of question it is. It might be examples, it might be description, it might be reasons. It just depends on the question. So they're going to be listening for a number of well-developed main ideas that are presented in an organized way. The next category is vocabulary, and this is all about the way you use language. So it's about your word choice, basically. The rater's going to decide if you're using words and phrases that are suitable for the specific situation that you're talking about. So some specific words, some relevant vocabulary. They're going to listen for whether you show that you know a range of words and phrases. So you probably want to avoid repeating the same word or the same phrase many times as you speak. If you need to repeat something, try to think of a different way to say it. And in general, try to avoid, having a limited vocabulary. You really want to show, if you do have a well-rounded vocabulary, you want to show that. This is your opportunity to do that. The raters only know what they hear. So if you have a very wide vocabulary, you have to show that in your responses. So they're listening for a range, a wide variety of different words and phrases. To get a level 9 or higher, some of those words and phrases are going to have to be extremely precise or sort of high level or maybe specialized words and phrases. So those are some things you would want to consider as you speak. Precision and accuracy are very important. So they're going to be thinking about, okay, so this person is using all these words and phrases. Are they using them correctly? Are they using them to communicate precise and clear information? And so that is the vocabulary section. Listenability is the third category. And I think this is the one that people, when they think about a speaking test, they think about a lot of these things the most. And yes, listenability is important, but again, content, vocabulary, task fulfillment are also important. So it's not the case that listenability is the most important or anything like that. They're all important and they're all rated separately. So your listenability is just how easy it is to understand your response and all of the things that go into your voice that make it easy or not so easy to understand what you're saying. So the first important factor here is your rhythm, your pronunciation, your intonation. If you have an accent, that's not something that you're going to lose points for automatically. Many people have accents, but it's still perfectly easy to understand what they're saying in English because their pronunciation is mostly correct and their intonation, the moving up and down of their voice, is accurate for the way it's done in English. That makes a big difference. So that is something they're going to think about, but it's not so much whether you have an accent, it's is your accent interfering with listenability? And if the answer is no, then your accent will not count against you on the test. They're going to think about pauses, interjections, and self-correction. These are things that we all do when we speak. Doing them a little bit is fine. It's normal. Doing them too much is going to make it very hard to follow along with your ideas, and it's going to make it hard for you to say a lot of different things because you'll be interrupting yourself. Pauses when you stop, when you hesitate. This is something we sometimes do on purpose. If you're introducing a new idea or you're stressing a word in a sentence, sometimes it's normal to pause. And if it's intentional and if it's adding meaning, then it's fine. If you're stopping constantly because you're trying to think of an idea or the grammar that you want or a word, that's when it's going to start interfering with meaning. Interjections are words like and Everybody does that from time to time. You will definitely hear me doing it today. It's normal, but again, you want to avoid doing it too much. If you're constantly going, you're using up your speaking time on something that isn't really contributing to your score. And if it's in the middle of a sentence or between ideas, the listener's going to forget what you just said, and it's going to be very hard to follow along. Self-correction is okay. We usually get this question, is it okay if I realize I make a mistake, can I correct it? If you realize it right away and you can correct it very quickly, then absolutely. If you say something like, she go to school every day, and you immediately know, oh, I wanted goes, just say goes to school and then keep talking. Don't stop and go back and make a big deal and interrupt yourself. Quickly say the correct thing and keep moving forward. Again, if you do this once during a speaking response, it's no problem. But if you're constantly doing it, it's going to really affect the listener's ability to follow along, and it's going to affect your ability to say different and new things because you're interrupting yourself again. Next thing in listenability is your grammar and your sentence structure, and then kind of connected to that is the variety of sentence structures that you use. So with grammar, if you're looking for a level 9 or higher, you want your grammar to be extremely strong. You don't want to be making a lot of errors. You don't want to be making errors that make it hard to understand your meaning. 1 or 2 mistakes here and there is okay, but if you're constantly making grammar mistakes, it's going to become harder and harder to understand what you're saying. Sentence structure is something that is important because it shows that you have the ability to build a sentence in many different ways. So, for example, you don't want to have all of your sentences be extremely short. You don't want your entire 90-second response for task 1 to be one long, complicated, strange sentence that is very hard to follow from beginning to end. You want to make sure that you're presenting your information in a way that shows you have the ability to put words in the right order, create different types of sentences, maybe some longer and some shorter, maybe some connected with conjunctions, things like that. So you want to basically show what you're capable of as far as your grammar and your sentence structure goes. Last category here is task fulfillment, and this is the dimension where the raters will think about whether you followed the instructions and whether your tone was appropriate. So they're thinking about relevance. Was everything you said on topic? They're thinking about completeness. Did you answer every part of the question? Did you give enough information for every part of the question? Tone is kind of how you emotionally come across, the level of formality, the level of politeness, the level of enthusiasm in your voice. All of those come into tone. And it also relates to word choice, because that has an impact as well. So for example, if you're giving advice to a friend and your voice sounds very, very uninterested, or maybe you're talking to a family member and you keep using extremely specialized academic vocabulary, like you're talking down to them, like you're a professor and you're talking to your brother or something. Your vocabulary might be correct, but the tone wouldn't really be appropriate. That's really not how we would talk to somebody in that situation. It would be strange for the person listening. So you just want to make sure you're using common sense. Always be polite. Never be rude. There's never a time when you need to be rude on the test, so you should always sound polite, and decide how formal the situation is based on the question and based on what part of the test it is, and you'll be fine. This is something test takers worry about a lot sometimes, and you don't really need to, because mostly we all kind of know what the right tone is for a situation. It's not something you really need to worry about. Length is the last factor here. Length is how long you speak. You want to speak for the full time, and you want to try not to be cut off by the timer. The recording will stop when your time is up, even if you're not done your sentence or your idea. So you want to try to get as close to usually 1 minute, sometimes 90 seconds, as you can. If you're clearly in the middle of your conclusion, you're clearly wrapping up, and you've already given all of your main ideas, and it's obvious that you're in your last sentence, and the timer cuts you off, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. It will not have an impact on your score that is going to destroy your CELPIP level. You can see how many different factors there are in rating. And so one little thing like that is one part of one dimension in one response. It's a very tiny part of the big picture. If you get cut off, don't think about it, right? Don't take that concern and that anxiety into the next part of the test. Everybody gets cut off. Almost everybody gets cut off. And again, if it's your conclusion and you've demonstrated great vocabulary, great listenability, presented lots of different ideas in an organized way, it's not going to be a big deal. Another thing you want to avoid is stopping speaking before the time is up. So if it's a 60-second response, you don't want to leave 10 seconds of empty space, or 15 or 20 seconds, right? Because that's kind of wasted opportunity. You're not really following the instructions, but also you're not using as much vocabulary or presenting as many different ideas or showing your ability to create different structured sentences if you're stopping your response only 30 seconds in. So it's not only a length problem, it can create other problems as well. So the best thing to do is to just try to get as close as you can, within a couple seconds one way or the other of the time limit. Okay, so CELPIP is scored on 12 levels. You probably know this already. It starts at minimal, which is the M at the bottom, and goes up to level 12, which is an extremely advanced level of proficiency being demonstrated consistently in all of your responses. These levels are lined up with the Canadian language benchmarks, the CLBs, which is a standard that is used in Canada, and you might be familiar with that. If you're not, that's okay, doesn't matter. Today's session, we're going to be focused on level 9 or higher. So that will be the focus of our session today. And a last little bit of information about scoring, some things about your score report. So after you take the test, 4 or 5 days later, your online score report will be available. And for each of the 4 skills, you'll receive what's called a performance profile. And it includes a summary of what a typical test taker at the level you received is able to do in that skill. So you'll get a performance report for speaking. If you get a level 9, the performance report you receive is the one that you're seeing on the screen now. And I think this is something that could be helpful to you because this really summarizes the skills that you need to show to get a level 9 in speaking. So it says you can communicate complex details, feelings, and attitudes. So your ideas need to be complex, they need to be developed and meaningful. In familiar and less familiar contexts. So whether you're talking to a friend or maybe an employer or maybe somebody you've never spoken with before, you are able to communicate with them effectively. You have control of some complex grammar. So you're showing your ability to use complex grammar, and you have an adequate professional repertoire of precise and context-specific vocabulary. That's a lot of big words. What it means is you have a pretty good vocabulary range. You're able to use some words that are extremely precise and specific to the context. So you're showing you have a wide vocabulary range. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. That's what adequate means. Your mistakes in grammar, word choice, and pronunciation rarely make it hard for people to understand your meaning. So your mistakes can happen. You can make mistakes, but they shouldn't be happening a lot. And they shouldn't be major errors that make it impossible to understand what you were trying to say. So you don't have to be perfect for level 9, but you do have to, your meaning has to be clear. So that is what you're going for if you're going for a level 9. Something that we have recently added to the website that I wanted to let you know about because I think it's something that test takers want and may be helpful to you is called the score comparison chart. And there's a link there. I'm not going to go to it right now, but when you get the video, you can either go to that link or you can just look up score comparison chart on Google and it'll take you there. This is something we've recently added to the website, and it's there for speaking and it's also there for writing. It includes 2 sample responses at every single CELPIP level, starting at M and going all the way up to 12. So you can listen to speaking responses at a level 8, at a level 9, at a level 12. You can hear some of the differences. These are also accompanied by some analysis. So the analysis is very detailed and it goes into specific reasons why the person achieved that level, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And if you're looking for new sample responses or you're curious to know kind of what a typical response at that level sounds like, this is a good resource. It's on the website. It's a free resource for everyone. Okay, so finally, let's move on to speaking task number 1. And just before we do, I'm gonna check my box and make sure I haven't missed any important questions. Brandy is handling all of the questions very well. Yeah, so I think we're gonna just keep going. We have lots of great comments and questions here today, it looks like, but I wanna keep moving forward so we can get through all the material. So let's talk about speaking task 1. Speaking task 1 is giving advice. That's always what you will be doing. And let's have a look at it. So this task involves giving advice, so telling someone some recommendations or some ideas about a situation. You're going to be helping somebody maybe make a decision or prepare for something that they want to do. So you always want to be talking to somebody directly. In this case, let's just see. So who are you talking to in this question? If you get this question on the test, who are you going to speak to? I'll just wait for some responses. So you get this question on the test and everyone is jumping in. Absolutely right. Yeah. So in this case, the question gives you a name, the name Mark. So it says your friend Mark is interested in getting to know a female coworker. So not all the questions are going to give you a name. Sometimes it might just say your friend is interested. And in this case, make up a name. You can use the name of somebody that you actually work with. You can use the name of somebody who is your friend or family member. It really doesn't matter. The name is up to you. In this case, you want to talk to Mark because the question tells you to do that. But that's not always going to happen. So you want to be talking directly to Mark. And this is kind of a new experience for some people because on the CELPIP test, you're actually speaking into a microphone in a test center. So something that's good to practice is practice doing speaking questions and really imagining that you're talking to somebody. I think a good strategy is to imagine that you're on your phone and talking to somebody who you enjoy talking to. Because when you do that, your voice is going to sound more enthusiastic. Your intonation is going to be more natural, more up and down. You're probably going to feel less nervous if you imagine you're chatting with a friend of yours or a coworker that you like. Then, here I am speaking into a microphone at the test center. Try to put yourself in that role and try to imagine that you're really talking to somebody who's listening to you. Maybe they're at home and you're on the bus, who knows, right? Speak at a normal volume. You don't need to yell. You don't need to whisper. Just talk at your usual volume. Ignore everyone else in the room and just think about yourself, think about who you're talking to, and communicating that message. So in this case, we're going to talk to Mark. And as we already know, we have 30 seconds of prep time and we have 90 seconds of recording time. That's always the case for task 1. So a question for you, how many parts would you say are in this question? And I'll read you the question in case anyone's watching on a tiny device, and then you can tell me how many parts. So it says, your friend Mark is interested in getting to know a female coworker, but is shy about starting a conversation with her. Give Mark some advice about how he should talk to her and what he could talk about. So how many parts would you say? Everyone is saying 2, and I will absolutely agree with you. Yeah, so first of all, how he should talk to her. Secondly, what he could talk about. So you need to do these 2 things in your response. So usually in the speaking task 1 question, it's going to be set up like this. You get a little bit of background information. Here's the situation. And then it's going to tell you what to do. And it might be only 1 part, it might be 2, it might be 3. You just don't know. So we have 2 in this question. We're going to listen to a sample response next. So a real test taker who got this question on the test and gave their answer. I will show it, or I'll show a transcript while I play the audio, because that way you'll be able to read along. And I'll let you know also, raters never have a transcript. So there's never a transcript of your speaking responses. We make these for the webinars because we only get to listen once. The raters have time to listen as many times as they need to. We need to keep moving forward, so we're just going to listen once. So we'll show you a transcript because that can help you to kind of absorb the response a little bit better and comment on it. So as you listen and read, think about the 4 dimensions. How is this test taker doing? How is their content? How is their organization? Are their ideas developed? How's their vocabulary use? How's their listenability? Is it easy to understand? Are they doing anything that's kind of interfering with meaning? And think lastly about task fulfillment. Did they answer the question? Did they have an appropriate tone of voice? So as you listen, you can think about those things. And if you have any thoughts, you can type them into the questions box. And you can also let me know if you think this test taker achieved a level 9 or not. If you think she got that level 9, or if you think maybe it's a little lower. Okay, so here is our sample response. And I will just turn on the audio now.
Hey Mark, I heard you're interested in Sherry. Wow, that's really good to know. She's a really awesome person. So you're really shy about it, then why don't you just like ask for a coffee, during like lunch break or something like that? Maybe you can just like initiate, maybe hey, do you wanna talk about project or something like that? That will be actually it's kind of smooth way. She won't be really like creeped out by it. Sometimes the female coworkers, when male coworkers ask them out, you feel kind of like they feel a little bit creeped out, especially they just like approach in a kind of a little bit wrong way or something like that. But if you ask for a coffee, to talk about project, you guys working together, that would be actually really nice, to talk about. She will feel like, maybe friendly about you. And maybe once you succeed in asking out for a coffee, maybe you can start asking for lunch or something like that later on. Maybe ask for like a drink, after work, but very casually. That'll be the key. So good luck with it, Mark, and I hope she likes it.
Okay, so that is the end of our response. She did speak for the full time, so she didn't leave out any she didn't leave any time blank. Let me know what you think. You can try to guess if you think this one achieved a level 9 or not. And you can also let me know if you heard or saw any strengths or weaknesses that you especially noticed. And I'll just wait a little bit and let you share your thoughts, and then I'll share some of the thoughts with the whole group. So if we first talk about content and coherence, so were the ideas organized and were the ideas developed? What do you think? Do you think this was well organized? Do you think she had some main ideas that she developed okay? Some of you are saying yes or fairly organized. We have one vote for no, but I think overall most of you are saying I think I agree with you. It's pretty well organized, right? It's not perfect by any means, but I don't think it's really impossible to understand. It flows pretty well, and the connections between the ideas to me are pretty clear, although you are definitely right that at times it would benefit from a little bit more maybe conjunctions or clear introduction of main ideas. What do we think about the vocabulary? Is there any comments about her vocabulary use? Any good specific vocabulary, or any vocabulary that's maybe a little weak or incorrect? Anything that's repeated too much? Let me know what you think here about words. So Hanye is suggesting initiate and creeped out, and I think you are suggesting those as examples of strong vocabulary. I would agree with that. I think that they're not overly formal, especially creeped out is almost well, not an idiom, but um, it's an expression that's very common. It's not even slang. It's a common expression, but it's a little bit informal, and it's absolutely the correct way that she used it was right. Some of you are saying there was a lot of repetition of things like and things like that, which I agree. Diana is saying she used, oh, sorry, Hania again is saying use phrasal verbs, which she did. She used some phrasal verbs, which was good. Phrasal verbs look easy, but they are not. I think they're one of the hardest things about English. So to be able to use some phrasal verbs correctly with the right preposition, to me, that is a good sign that somebody's English is pretty good. Let's see. How about listenability? Many of you have already commented on listenability, how easy it was to read and understand. We have a lot of you pointing out that she says a lot, lots of interjections. She says, which is an interjection too, is something especially young people, I think, use when they're kind of looking for the next thing in the sentence. Some of us use like a lot for that reason as well, so I would almost count those as interjections. How do you think that she had good intonation? Was her voice rising and falling in a way that was natural? Most of you say yes. I agree. I think her intonation to me was quite effective. It felt very natural. It felt like somebody that's been like living in an English speaking environment for a long time. That was my guess. I don't know her, so I don't know if that's true, but I feel like she kind of knows what to do with her rising and falling. She uses it to communicate effectively. Okay, so we think listenability may have been a little bit weak. And I kind of agree with that. I would also add that there were some pronunciation issues here and there. I think she was speaking very quickly, and as a result, there were times when her pronunciation of words or phrases was a little bit unclear. We know what she said because we have a transcript, but I think if you listen without a transcript, you wouldn't have understood every single word because things like project, I heard her say something more like Prozac, which is a medication and certainly not something you would want to talk about while you go out for coffee, things like that. So there were some moments like that where I was a little confused. If I didn't have the transcript, I would have had to do more work. What do we think about grammar? Is she making grammar errors or is her grammar really good? Or what do you think? Do we have any complex grammar or do we have any errors? Some of you are saying it's good, and I think it was pretty good. Not perfect. Um, and here are some. I'll show you some examples in a moment. I think something like a little bit wrong way, for example, kind of a little bit wrong way. Another thing that I noticed that she did repeatedly was she said, ask her for lunch or ask her for a coffee or ask her for a drink. And that's not the meaning she wanted. Um, you're not saying, hey, please give me a drink. That would be asking her for a drink. You want to ask her out for a drink or ask her to go for a drink with you. So her phrasing there is repeatedly not quite right. And that's the work that I had to do as the listener to figure out, well, obviously she doesn't mean please give me a drink. She means please come for a drink with me. So her grammar there is pretty consistently wrong. She's got some longer sentences and some shorter sentences. Mostly, I think she's kind of using imperative like ask and do and think and things like that. So her verb tenses are pretty consistent, present with a little bit of imperative. So not a huge variety there, but then you're giving advice. So you probably will be relying a lot on those kinds of constructions. Task fulfillment, what do we think? Did she answer the whole question? Yeah, so Mihir is suggesting she did not explain in detail how to approach Sherry. Yeah, she didn't really. There were kind of two parts to the question, and um, she she talked a lot about what he could talk about, which was the one part of the question, but she talked quite a bit less about how. Um, or maybe it's the reverse. I think it kind of depends how you interpret it. She says maybe you could talk about the project. Maybe that's the only time she really suggests, and it's not very clear. Which project? Even something like the project due next Friday or the accounting project or some kind of description would have allowed her to be more clear and even to use some more vocabulary there. So yeah, I think that she definitely focused on one part instead of giving, you don't have to give equal time, but giving enough time to both parts of the question. Okay, so this is just the analysis that we wrote out. So this is things we've already talked about, but just some examples maybe here that we didn't mention. So if you decide to come back and watch the video, you can have a look at this. And it's also included in your study pack. So if you want to read through it there, you can also do it there. But we've talked about these things. So um, just to let you know, that was a level 8. So this test taker who we just listened to received a level 8 for that response. It's already been rated, so it's not okay. We can't argue with it, but that was a level 8. It was a pretty solid level 8. She didn't quite make it to that level 9, and I am going to play a level 9 shortly, so you'll be able to hopefully hear some of the differences. Um, Colleen, I am pronouncing that word correctly. I hate it when people say pronunciation, and I don't think I've ever done that, but I am Canadian, so you might be hearing my Canadian accent. But thanks for your comment. I don't like pronunciation either, and I definitely don't say it. Okay, so it's your turn to practice. So it's your turn. And again, I'm not going to be able to listen to these. So if you want to do a practice, you can. If you want to record it, that's great because then you'll be able to listen back to it after the webinar today. And you might be able to use those performance standards to make kind of a list of things that you're doing correctly and things you want to work on. So I'm going to do it just like on the real test. You will have your 30 seconds of prep time and you will have your 90 seconds of speaking time. This will be a new question. So it's not the question that we just listened to a response to. I'll tell you when to start and when to stop, and the timers will also count down on the screen. And if you want the authentic experience, you can try taking notes during the prep time and really recording yourself during the speaking time. So I hope you're ready. Prepare yourself. Here we go. So here's your question. Your preparation time starts now. Okay, and your 90 seconds of speaking time starts now. Okay, and that is the end of your speaking time. So I'm just gonna move to a new slide here. My computer does not like those timers. It gets very upset. So how did that go for you? What do you think? Was it hard? Was it stressful? Was it easy to come up with your ideas as you were speaking? Sometimes we get the first person's sometimes it's people's first try and they're kind of overwhelmed and stressed out. Yeah, this is something you want to practice. It doesn't matter what English level you're at. This is something you want to practice because for most people it's a new experience. Most of us haven't had the experience of having a little prep time and then responding to a question like this. And so even if you're very confident in your speaking skills, that's great, it's still something that's worth practicing so that you aren't stressed out by the situation. And that can cause people to kind of freeze and not be able to express themselves as clearly as they could otherwise. So if you're practicing today and you're finding it difficult or stressful, that's too bad, but it's also good in a way because now you're learning that now and you'll have time to practice and get over that a little bit before test day. So Let me know what you thought. Yeah, so some of you said the timing was a challenge. It is, right? Because it's probably a new experience. So getting used to the time is something that is very helpful. You might not have time to come up with some really strong, well-supported ideas in only 30 seconds. If I was doing the prep time for 30 seconds, I might not even write anything down, or I might write down 2 or 3 words, my main ideas, just to keep me focused as I speak and just kind of to make me feel confident that I have my main ideas so that I don't forget to include them. But you're not going to be able to make an outline or anything like that in only 30 seconds. So it's really just time to read the question, give it a little thought, maybe write down a couple of words, and then get ready to start speaking. And something you can do to practice is give yourself more preparation time for a question. Give yourself time to think about and maybe even develop some main ideas before you start speaking. You're not going to get to do that on the test, but if you do that and if you strengthen your ability to come up with ideas and think of reasons to support them, that's going to help you on test day. Even though you're not going to get that same amount of time, you will have strengthened your skills. So don't always do timed practice. It's very fine and perfectly helpful to do untimed practice as well and practice giving yourself a little bit of extra time to think about what you want to say. So if that was challenging or stressful, no worries. We're going to do a little bit more practice here, and we're going to keep going. And Guillermo's asking a good question. Do you have access to pen and paper during the test? Yes, you will get pen and paper at the test center. And because it's speaking is the last thing, if you don't have any more space on your paper or you want a clean sheet of paper, just raise your hand and ask for it. But make sure you don't do it like while you speak or something like that. Maybe raise your hand and ask for it at the end of the writing part that comes before so that you have it already when it's speaking time. Okay, so we're going to listen to a test taker respond to that question you just tried. Again, I'll show you the transcript. And again, we'll have a look at this one and we'll decide together if we think this is a level 9, if you think it got to that place, or if you think it's still a little bit lower. So here's our sample.
Hey John, many congratulations on getting selected to in the university of your choice. Well, since your university is where I've done all my college, I was in Vancouver for 5 years, and I went to the private institutions, but a lot of my friends went to this university, and I know it's a really good university. What I've heard from my friend is there's an in-house accommodation, so you don't have to go far. One, I know that it's pretty expensive, and one good thing about studying here is you can do part-time jobs. And when I was studying, I didn't have an option to do part-time job, but since the immigration rules have changed, you'll have an option to do 20 hours of part-time work, or any number of hours if you get a job on campus. So that might be a great help. And since I've been there, I was in that country for that city for 5 years. I know a lot of people. So once you land there, just let me know. I can give you some references. I can even forward your resume to some of the employers I know. And I don't think so it should be a problem for you, because by working part time you can at least afford your accommodation and a great deal of tuition.
Okay, so you can hear that he got cut off. He didn't finish his final sentence, but he was clearly at the end. I think that sentence began. I don't think it should be a problem for you. He's wrapping up, right? He's not going to present another main idea. He's in the process of winding down. So that would not have had a huge or maybe any impact on this test taker's score. So what do you think? Any thoughts about that one? There's always a bit of a lag. Okay, so Kanika, you're saying it was good. A couple of you think it was actually lower than the first one that we heard. There were a couple things I think our first test taker did better, but there were also a few things that I think this test taker did better. And it's hard to compare it directly because they answered two different questions, but we can still comment on those things. A couple of you are pointing out that in the content coherence dimension, the first dimension, a little bit maybe he went a little bit off topic, although he's a little more organized in terms of his structure. Maybe in the task fulfillment area, he didn't really stay on the topic. So maybe the relevance in task fulfillment was affected, and maybe he could have done more even in the content area to clarify the meaning of some of his ideas. I found I was a little confused. For example, he was being very general, and we don't really know what university it is. And then he talks a little about Vancouver, and then he goes back to saying in that country or in that city. And it seems almost like maybe he's trying to avoid being specific. And you don't need to do that. In fact, you shouldn't do that. Be as specific as you can be. So when the question says your friend wants to go to the university of their choice, think about a university that you know about a little bit, or maybe it's in the city you currently live in. So you can talk about opportunities in that city, how things work at that university. And don't be afraid to say, oh yeah, I lived in Vancouver and I worked at, and you can name a specific place even. On campus or off campus. You can bring very specific details in, and it doesn't need to be true. It doesn't need to be something you actually went to or worked at, but you can bring those details into this imaginary situation and make them a little more specific and clear, which is something I think this test taker could have done better. I was a little confused by where and what he was talking about sometimes. And that's a content thing. That's a development of ideas thing. Vocabulary. Do we think his vocabulary was pretty strong, or um, any major complaints in that area? Some of you are saying it's pretty strong. Yeah, it's not perfect, but I do think this test taker is a little more has a little more variety and maybe a little more depth to the vocabulary choices that they've made, and maybe makes fewer errors than our first test taker did. So things like in-house accommodation. One good thing about studying here, even though those are kind of basic words, that's a very natural phrase when you put them together. I know a lot of people, just let me know. There's if I can give you some references, forward your resume. So we have, I think, a little bit more variety of vocabulary that's specific than we did in our first example. It's not perfect, but I think it's slightly better than our first example in terms of variety and in terms of complexity. Listenability, any thoughts there? Thinking about things like their intonation, pronunciation, grammar, sentence structure. Here is saying it was easy to understand. I thought it was pretty easy to understand. Bruno, I think you're saying he sounds a little sad. And I kind of agree. I think our first example was a little stronger with intonation, with the rising and falling of her voice. She actually sounded enthusiastic and positive. And this test taker, I don't know if he sounds sad, but he sounds kind of maybe a little bit less interested than our first test taker did. And that's an intonation thing. His voice is a little flat. Lots of test takers do that, especially because they're worried about how loud they're speaking or the people around them. And again, don't worry about that. Just talk at your normal volume, like you're talking to a friend, like I'm talking to you right now, right? I'm not yelling at you, but I'm also not whispering. I'm not even thinking about it. This is just the natural volume of my voice. And that's what you kind of want to try for on the test. If you try to speak quietly, it's going to do this to your intonation. It's going to make your intonation a lot flatter. So our level 8 test taker actually was better at intonation. But I think this test taker is better at sentence structure. We have some complex sentences here. We didn't really have a lot of that in our level 8 example. And we have some very natural constructions like once you land there, just let me know. That's something that doesn't sound complex, but it's a construction that is a little more complex than just a simple sentence. It's got a bigger variety of sentence structures overall. And then task fulfillment, again, as some of you have said, he does go a little off topic for sure. And I think maybe he hasn't fully and completely answered the question of what this friend should do to earn money. He's talking at the beginning about where he went to school and how good of a school it is and things like that that aren't really related to the question. It's okay to have a little introduction, but I think he goes on with it a little too much and kind of spends some time talking about the university that he could have spent answering the question more directly. So I would say maybe task fulfillment, he didn't quite answer the question fully and he didn't quite stay on topic. So this, for those who are wondering, this is a level 9. This test taker got a level 9 on this response. Again, we have some things he didn't do as well as our level 8, but we have a few things that he did better. So overall, this one was rated slightly higher. So this is a level 9. And I'll just quickly put the analysis up on the screen. So this we're not going to go through because we've already discussed most of it. And if you want to have a look at it, you can either come back to this video or you can check it out in your study pack. It's there as well. So we're going to keep going on. We're going to finish task 1 with some strategies. So some key strategies for the task 1 question. Talk directly to somebody. Always. If you want to do this, you could do that, right? You're talking to a you that you're imagining. Try to give at least 3 suggestions because it's a 90-second question. You won't necessarily have time for 3 main ideas in a 1-minute question, but this one is 90 seconds. I think you have time to build 3 main ideas. If you only have 2 really good ideas and you develop them very well, that's okay too, right? There's no specific rule about how many main ideas you must have. But for a question like this, 3 is a good thing to try for. I would say a minimum of 2, because if you only have 1 main idea, it's not going to go well. You just aren't going to have that much to say about it. Try for 3, 2 is okay. 4 is probably a stretch. I think it would be hard to develop 4 ideas carefully in the time. Try to give examples and reasons for each suggestion. And you want to be practical because you're giving advice. So you want the reasons and suggestions to make sense and to be applicable to this person's situation. Do your best to introduce each main idea with some sort of transition or signal word. If I were you, I would blah, blah, blah. Another thing you could do is blah, blah, blah. Or one last idea, etc. Right? Introducing your main ideas really helps with organization. It also helps with listenability, and you can even show off some vocabulary if you know some very precise transitions you can use there. So try to train yourself away from always just starting with so or and in every single sentence and introducing your ideas with some more specific language. Always use an appropriate tone, just sound helpful. You just want to sound helpful and like you're interested in the situation. So again, just imagine you're talking to somebody you like on the phone, and how would you speak to that person? You probably want to sound like you're listening and you're interested. That's the same way you want to sound on the test. Okay, we're going to move on to speaking task 2. Finally, talking about a personal experience. So that will always be kind of the main focus of task 2. You're going to talk about a past experience, a personal experience, something that happened to you. It won't be anything like really sad or really private. It won't be that kind of question. It'll be a much more general question where you absolutely don't need to discuss anything that's hard to talk about. For these questions, because it's a personal experience from your past, you're going to be using a lot of past tenses. Probably most of your sentences will have some sort of past tense in them, whether it's simple past or past progressive, whatever the sentence means. That doesn't mean you can't use a present tense sentence? Absolutely you can. There may be very good reasons to do that. So there's no rules about what tense you must use or must not use, but because of the nature of this question, it's likely that you're going to be using a lot of past tenses. And so probably if you're working on practicing for task 2, that would be a useful thing to practice. You want to give lots of description, lots of details about one experience. So you want to choose one thing to talk about and describe it very carefully. So here is an example of a task 2 question. It says, talk about a time you had to teach something to someone. Maybe you can talk about teaching a game, a skill, or a tradition. What did you teach? To whom did you teach it? And how did you teach it? Okay, so in this question, are there any suggestions? Are there any sentences in the question that are giving you suggestions? Some of you are jumping in. Some of you are saying yes. What's the first word of the sentence where it's giving you some ideas or suggestions? Yeah, the sentence that starts with maybe. That's the sentence where the question is just trying to help you out. So what you must do in this question, you must talk about a time you taught something to someone. That is not optional. And you must answer the 3 parts of the question. So we talk about what, to whom, and how. The middle sentence here, maybe you can talk about this, maybe that. It's just there to help you come up with something to talk about because you don't have a lot of time to think and maybe you're feeling on the spot or anxious, and this sentence is just offering you some possibilities. You don't have to talk about a game or a skill or a tradition. You could talk about something else. There are like cooking something, or I don't know, there's lots of other things you could teach someone, right? So these are just suggestions. It starts with maybe. So it's not trying to limit you to those 3. It's just trying to say, here's something to put you on the right track. So not every task 2 question will have those suggestions, but this one does. And so that might help you come up with a good idea. So I will ask you, imagine if you got this question on the test. What would you talk about? What is something that you would discuss from your own life, an experience of teaching something? What did you teach and to whom did you teach it? I like reading these. They're always fun. Okay, so we have a few right off the bat. Teaching someone how to play the mandolin. That sounds very complicated. Playing a musical instrument, though, would be a great idea. Teaching somebody how to draw, or teaching somebody a sport like basketball, or a skill like going to a job interview, or being a nurse. Could be a profession. It could be a job situation where you train one of your coworkers who's new. A lot of you are now talking about food, which is making me hungry. How to bake bread or cookies. Yeah, I wish you would teach me that. I love baking. I love eating sweets. My house is always full of it. Jewelry making, swimming, how to dance, how to present a presentation. So a lot of these are very practical. A lot of them are work related. Some of them are more personal. We have some skills, we have some instrument, we have some, I don't see any traditions, but you could talk about something like that, like how we typically celebrate Christmas in Canada, maybe if you had a visiting student staying with you, or something like that. So, or something religious, a ceremony, or a wedding or whatever. So there's tons of opportunities, right? We've all taught something to somebody, and the question is hoping that you're going to come up with something pretty quickly and then kind of revisit that in your mind and come up with some good details and information about it. So let's listen to a sample response, and this is a response to this question. Again, I'm going to show the transcript as I play it, so you can also read as you listen. And think about this response. You can let me know what you think. Any comments you have about it, type them into the questions box.
The one time that I had to teach someone, it was a couple of years ago when I had to teach my friend Peter to ski, because I'm an avid skier and I have a long time experience. So he asked me to teach him. First, I explained him the basics, how to mount the skis onto your boots, strap them down, and everything. So obviously, I didn't take him up to the highest peak, but I picked a moderate slope. So we just walked it up, and so I went down. I showed him approximately how to go down on the moderate slope, how to brake, how to make the turns. So he followed me after that. He was pretty good at it. So we did a couple of more times, and then we went up to a little bit more steeper slope, so that he can improve in a different condition, improve his skills in the different conditions.
Okay, so again, here we have a test taker who was cut off by the timer. This response is shorter. This one you speak for 60 seconds, so 1 minute. So it's less than task 1. Again, you're getting 30 seconds of prep time. So what do you think? What did you hear or notice about that response? Vishal is saying this person is repeating the word "so" a lot of times, which I definitely agree with. I think we want to improve the transitions. Here is saying there's some good vocabulary, which I agree. There's some good relevant vocabulary that's more specific to the topic of skiing, like moderate slope. Varun, you're saying that the thoughts are pretty organized, and I think that's true. He's definitely he's telling the story in a sequence, even though he's not using a lot of words like first and next and then. He is actually telling things as they happen in time. I see a comment that says sentence construction. I'm not sure if you're saying that it's good or it's less than good. Joseph, you're saying the listenability is understandable and clear. I think for the most part, it was pretty listenable. There were a couple of words like moderate that had the wrong word stress. So pronunciation was a little bit off, but I still understood what he was saying. So there were no real major pronunciation problems there. And as far as task fulfillment, we have a comment that he did answer the question. He answered all parts of the question, and I agree that he did that. So if we have a look at the analysis, we've talked about some of these things already. So he got a level 8. I'll tell you that. He got a level 8. So he didn't quite hit that level 9. And there were a few reasons why. In terms of content, absolutely. He tells the story in a very logical order with quite a few different details. And he uses transitions, but essentially he basically uses so and then and over and over again to arrange his ideas. The ideas aren't really very developed. There's not a lot of details here. We know the basics, and the basics are communicated very clearly in a logical order, but we don't learn a lot of details. We don't learn a lot of specifics about who are these people, what happened, anything like that. Vocabulary, he does a pretty good job talking about using words related to skiing specifically, like highest peak and avid skier. That's great. We have a few awkward phrases in here, like long time experience. You would want to say a lot of experience or a range of experience or something like that. So his pronunciation was good. His rhythm was pretty good. Occasionally we have some interjections. I kind of think for him, so is almost an interjection. It's kind of the word he uses when he's trying to think of what to say next, because he uses it so much that it's almost more than just a transition word for him, I think. And we do have some awkward grammar here that you would want to fix. In terms of task fulfillment, he does give some context. He does answer the whole question. He talks for the entire time. He isn't able to really reach a conclusion before the time is up. But overall, he does pretty well in task fulfillment. So he got a level 8, but he didn't get a level 9. So let's talk about some things that could happen to improve this response. This is something you can do if you record a response today or any time while you're preparing for the test. This is something you can do with your own responses. Make yourself a transcript and then think about, if I had all the time in the world to improve it, what would I do? How would I make those improvements? And of course, you don't have that time to edit like that on the test. That's not going to happen. But again, by building those skills while you're preparing, you're going to be a stronger test taker when you get to the test. Some of those things you teach yourself to do, like using more transitions and adding more details, they're going to become more automatic. And then by the time you get to test day, you'll be doing those things kind of naturally. So we'll talk about this response and we'll go through it from beginning to end. Not at all suggesting that this is a realistic thing that you could do on test day, but it is a realistic thing that you can do when you're preparing, and it's a useful thing. So let's talk about the beginning. It's important to have an introduction, some sort of opening sentence that is clear and that introduces the topic. And that is happening here. He's introducing the topic and it's pretty clear. It's a pretty good opening. It's not terrible. Level 8 is not a bad score, right? So this person is quite fluent, but it could be a little more detailed. It could be improved a little in some ways. So let's switch the content up a little bit to make it a little more clear. So a couple of years ago, my friend Peter asked me to teach him how to ski. I'm an avid skier with years of experience, so I was pretty confident that I could help him. This is a little bit more complex sentence structure, and it gives a little more insight into the situation than the original version, which again isn't bad, but I had to teach my friend Peter to ski. Well, you didn't exactly have to, right? He asked you to, and he says that later. And oh, because I'm an avid skier, which is almost a new sentence. It shouldn't be. So he asked me to teach him. We already know you're going to teach him. So it's a little bit repetitive and the steps are a little bit out of order. It's kind of vague, although we get the gist easily. Something like this is just a little clearer and more focused. Now we have what all of you noticed, which is that this test taker likes to say so. And he is actually telling the story in a very good logical order. That's great. That contributes to coherence. What he's not really doing is making that clear by using the transitions that would come with putting a lot of things in a specific order. We don't need all of this so. It's really not helping very much. And on the test, it's better if you can use a wider range of transition words. It's something that you might not be used to right now, but it's something you can work on and teach yourself to do more. Starting with first, when you're introducing your first thing, is very natural and absolutely fine. So first, I explain the basics to him, and then we have a list of those. Once he got the hang of this, this is not really a transition. Once is really more of a conjunction, but it's showing, okay, some time passed and we changed what we were doing when he got the hang of it. Get the hang of something is a very natural expression. It means to kind of learn the basics of something, get comfortable with the basics, and it's a very natural expression to use in this context. And you don't have to speak extremely formally at all times on the test. That's not necessary. I've seen a couple of questions. Could I use slang sometimes or expressions? Sure, right? If you're talking to your friend or telling a story about what happened to you and your friend, it's probably going to be a little more casual than, you know, explaining to your boss why you can't work on Friday, something like that. So adjust your vocabulary to suit the situation and to suit what you're actually trying to achieve with your speaking. This is a little bit more of a casual response. So something like get the hang of it is perfectly acceptable. We've kind of combined some of his shorter so sentences into a longer sentence. Once he got the hang of this, we walked up a moderately sloped hill so he could get some practice before going up the ski lift to try one of the beginner trails. Again, in the moment, this test taker was not going to think of that sentence. But if you work on your sentence structure and start practicing using different prepositional phrases, using more complex vocabulary, using those conjunctions, starting with a clear transition, it's going to get easier to do. And on test day, you'll do some of this stuff without really having to think about it. And then the test taker said something that's a little bit not super clear. So we just walked it up, and so I went down, right? This is really what happened, right? The actual specific things that happened, I showed him how to keep his skis together, how to brake, how to make the turns, all of the essential skills that any skier must learn. So again, we have a more complex sentence here with more specific information, specific detail. Instead of just going up and going down, we have some specifics of what actually happened. Then the test taker says the next part in red, so he followed me after that. He was pretty good at it, so we did it a couple more times. Nothing wrong with the grammar here. Pretty good vocabulary, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It could be tweaked. It could be a little bit clearer, and it could be a little more specific. So something like this would accomplish that. He was a very quick learner and started to feel very confident in his abilities. That elevates the vocabulary a little bit. It allows for some sort of higher level, lower frequency vocabulary to come in. And that's great. That's going to help your vocabulary score. It also creates some more complexity in sentence structure. That's going to help your listenability. And then we kind of have this part at the end where it sounds like to me the test taker realized he was running out of time and kind of started to panic. And so he didn't really express his final idea very clearly. That can happen. Again, he did well. He got a level 8, but in an ideal world where you have all the time to think about it, you probably would want to reach a conclusion that's a little clearer, that is a little more intentional. So even his vocabulary and his grammar starts to get worse in this final sentence. So we're going to make some pretty extreme improvements. Again, we have a time marker after about an hour. So we're showing how long this took, how much time has passed. Much more specific than so. He wanted to try a bigger hill, and now we have some detail added. I tried to convince him to do one of the safer trails first, but he was convinced he was too good for that. This is a nice detail. It shows the personality of the learner and the teacher. Absolutely okay to have some humor, some funny stuff in your story if something funny happened or something really interesting or something that showed your personality or the learner's personality. Don't be afraid to include that. Any detail like that makes the listener really understand and feel like they can imagine the situation is going to be good. So we've just added a little detail here about this person thinking, oh, I'm a master skier now after one try. And the last thing we've done is we've added a clear conclusion. This test taker got cut off before he was able to really make any kind of conclusion, but we've added some additional details. So on his very first run on an advanced trail, he lost control and almost hit a tree at full speed. After that, he listened carefully to my advice. Interestingly, he is now a ski instructor. I like to think I inspired him. So this is idealized, right? Not suggesting that that test taker should have said exactly these words or anything like that. But again, this is something you can do with a response you've recorded to think about the details sentence by sentence, and you can build your skills in that way. People always ask, what level would it get? What is it now? Well, we don't know because this is not a response that somebody came up with during the test, during the amount of time that they had to record it. This is something that my coworker wrote probably over the space of an hour, thinking very carefully about every sentence. So we can't really give it a level. We also don't have a recording of it, so we don't know how the listenability would be. But we know that it's stronger in its specific details, in its organization. It's got a wider range of specific vocabulary, and it answers the questions with more detail and more completeness. So we know that this response, and we've also corrected a lot of grammar. So we know that it would do very well because we have the performance standards. It would definitely be higher than a level 9. If a native speaker said this and it was very listenable, it would be way up there. It would get a very high score. Okay, so this same question that we just talked about, oh no, it's a different one. Sorry, this is a new question. So I'm gonna play for you a level 9 response because we haven't heard a level 9 response for task 2. So this is a new question. I thought it was the same because it was about teaching, but it's about a class. So this is a time when you talk about learning something. So this is a very typical question as well. Talk about a class that you really enjoyed. Maybe you can talk about a class at school or college. Maybe you can talk about a fun class, such as cooking or music. So it's really leaving it up to you, giving you some of those suggestions. It's just simply saying to talk about a class. It's not giving you any specific instructions beyond that. So you can decide what to include in a question like this because it's a one-part question. There's no sub-parts. So here's a response. This is a level 9 to that question. Again, we have the transcript up so you can follow along.
It's been such a long time since I've taken a class, but I do believe that algorithms was one of my favorite classes. I guess I really enjoyed the fact that we were always learning something new and it was always making your brain work. It was challenging and very interesting, and honestly, I have to admit that I loved correcting the professor with the examples and so on, which is kind of a touchy subject right now since I am the one teaching and the students are correcting me. But I am hoping that my professors were taking it in the same way as I do now, as in it's not a big deal. It's better to give a correct example than a mistaken one. I really should start looking at algorithms again. I miss it. It's a fun topic and I should do it again.
Okay, so she didn't get cut off. She might be the first one we've heard who didn't get cut off today. She ended right at the end of her 60 seconds. So again, that was a level 9. It was not a 12 plus. It was a level 9. It was pretty good. And I think you can hear the difference between this one and the level 8 that we listened to. This one is stronger in many, if not all, of the dimensions. It's not perfect. There's always room for improvement, but it is certainly a level 9 response. So if that's the kind of level that you're looking for, this is the kind of response that you want to be giving. Again, we've got our analysis here. If you're interested, we'll spend a little time just kind of briefly going through some of this. So I would say her content was a little bit more developed. She had more precise information and specific details. It was very organized. I don't think there were any issues understanding the organization, so I think it was quite good. She had more specific vocabulary. So if we look back at the transcript, we can see quite a bit of vocabulary related to taking a course and then also to the specific course that she took. And she mentions she is now teaching this subject, which is interesting. Obviously, this class had a major impact on her if she is now a professor or an instructor of some kind. So that's an interesting detail, and something like that is absolutely okay to include in task 2. It doesn't have to be serious and formal, right? She is making it very clear that she's enjoying remembering this and really had a good time in the class and even some funny stuff that happened, and that's perfectly okay. Listenability was great. Her pronunciation was, I think, fine. I didn't have any issues understanding. Her rhythm was very steady. She uses intonation very naturally. The rising and falling of her voice communicates a lot of emotion. It's very intentional the way she does it. And she does have some complex grammar structures in here. Where's a good one? Oh, honestly, I have to admit that I loved correcting the professor with the examples of so on. It's kind of a touchy subject right now since I'm the one teaching and the students are correcting me. There were a couple self-corrections in there, a couple of interjections, but overall, that sentence is extremely complex and extremely natural. And a few self-corrections or interjections here and there is absolutely normal for spoken English. Everybody makes errors from time to time. So she's demonstrating her ability to use complex grammar, and she definitely pulls it off. Most of her information is relevant to the question. She kind of does focus a little on, you know, how it felt to correct the professor and stuff like that, which is an okay detail, but I think maybe including some stuff a little more related to the class itself might have been helpful, like maybe a specific detail about what she might have corrected or how the professor reacted or something. It could have gone a little more into the actual topic, but overall, again, she did great. Her tone is wonderful. She sounds genuinely interested in what she's saying, and that means it's interesting to listen to. You want to know what she's going to say next. She has an opening and a closing, right? She's able to bring her response to a conclusion before the time is up, and that's helpful. A lot of the responses we've heard today, they really weren't even at their conclusion when they ran out of time. One of them was, I think, but it's great if you're able to have a concluding statement. Make it clear that you're done saying what you want to say. It just really helps with organization and also helps with task fulfillment. So overall, a very strong level 9 there. So if you want to listen back to that, you'll be able to do that because that audio file with the analysis is included in your study pack. So let's review task 2. Some key strategies. Firstly, you want to decide quickly what you want to talk about. Choose one thing. Don't talk about like 5 different experiences that you had teaching somebody. Choose one, and you want to build that with details. You want to make it a very real and vivid story. When you hear someone tell you a story and it's very detailed and the person is excited to be telling it, that's the kind of feeling you want to communicate when you're doing your storytelling. If you really can't think of an experience, you can make one up. It's not going to hurt your score. I personally think trying to invent all the details of a made-up situation would actually be more difficult than just talking about a real one, but everyone's different. So if you really can't think of something and you're just stuck, absolutely, you can make one up. You can make up details. Nobody's going to know, and it really doesn't matter. As long as you're organized and listenable and using a wide range of vocabulary. So it's not a test of facts. Use past tenses. You will mostly be using past tenses simply because of the nature of the question topic. But as you could hear in our example we just listened to, she used many other verb tenses. She used some present, she used some modal verbs. I should take that again. Now I'm the professor, so she used some present, she used some kind of wishing about the future. Perfectly fine, right? It doesn't need every single sentence to be in the past tense, but most of them will be because you're telling about a past event. Be very descriptive. Be as descriptive as you can. Describe people's emotions. Describe any situations that happen. Try to make the person feel like they're there with you, experiencing that event. So detail and specifics is really going to help you a lot in this one. Let's move on. We are, as usual, running late. No matter what I do, we're running late. Speaking task 3 is connected to task 4. So we can do these a little bit more quickly. So speaking task 3 is to talk about a scene. And it's always going to be an illustration. It will be bigger than what you're seeing on your screen right now because there won't be any of the extra stuff on your screen. It will just be the test. So if you're having trouble seeing this little picture, please know that it will be larger on testing. The instructions are always the same. So what you need to do for task 3 will not surprise you. You're going to know exactly what to do going in. You have 30 seconds of prep time and you have 60 seconds to speak. And what you're going to do is have a look at that illustration and describe some things that are happening. You don't need to describe everything. In fact, you probably shouldn't try. There's too many different things happening. You want to describe as specifically as you can, which means pointing out specific details like what are the people holding? Where are they standing? Are there facial expressions? Can you tell their emotions? What are they wearing? What color's their hair? Anything like that. Any of those details you can talk about. And you imagine you're describing it to somebody who can't see what you're looking at. I don't think for task 3 it ever tells you who you're talking to, so you can just imagine anybody in the world that you like. Imagine your best friend, or imagine your mom. Talk about it to them. And you'll have the picture. We get this question quite a bit. You will be able to look at the picture while you speak, so it's not going to disappear. So we've already talked about these things. What should you describe? Well, that's really up to you, but you should describe some of the things that you see happening in the picture. Who are you speaking to? That's up to you. But make sure you talk to someone. Imagine yourself talking to someone. It's really going to help with the expressiveness of your voice. Okay, so I'm just going to check my questions box, make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, so some people ask for this one, should I talk about it like it's a picture, like I'm looking at a drawing, or should I talk about it like it's real and I'm like actually standing in this grocery store looking around at these real people? And the answer is, it's up to you. If you want to talk about it like I've just opened up this picture book for my little son and I've come across this picture, I really think it's interesting, so I'm going to tell you about it. That's fine. If you want to imagine that you're really there, maybe you're waiting for somebody, or maybe they were going to join you but they couldn't, or whatever the case may be, but it's a real place. I'm here at the Safeway and I'm standing near the checkout counters and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what's going on here today. That's fine too. So whether you talk about it as a picture or imagine you're really there is your call. There's no right or wrong with that. So let's listen to a sample response to this question. So I'm going to leave the picture on the screen this time as we listen, and then I'll switch to the transcript after we're done listening so you can see it. And you can let me know what you think. You can try to guess the level if you like. And you can also let me know if you see any strengths or weaknesses that you want to point out.
Well, I can see a supermarket hall. It's quite large, not very busy. There are about 9 people there. I can see 2 cashiers. One of them is closed, so only one register is actually opened. There are 3 rows at the supermarket. There are a lot of vegetables selling. Looks like oranges and lemons are on sale. There are 2 kids who are very excited. They're picking up the watermelons. There is also a boy with his mother who looks like he wants to buy, I'm not sure if it's a book or it's a bag of cookies. Another boy is asking his father to buy him something in the.
Aha, another test taker cut off. So we've heard some level 8s and we've heard some level 9s today. What do you think about this one? Do you think this test taker got to that level 9? Did you hear any particular strengths or weaknesses in their those 4 dimensions that we've talked about? Let me just have a look. Almost everybody is saying level 8, but this was actually a level 9. This is a level 9. And when I listen to it, absolutely can hear why. So it is a level 9. Yes, Luana, really. It is definitely, yeah, it's a very good level 9. So what did you hear? What did you hear in the response that made you think it wasn't? What weaknesses did you hear? Or if you did think it was a level 9, what did you think was strong? So April's saying at first she's kind of like forced to describe. Yeah, you are forced to describe a scene. That is the situation, right? That's the question. So she she has to start somewhere, and that is the situation, that you have to describe this, whether it's a real place or picture. So she does start with saying what she's looking at, which is helpful. It's like a little introduction. Supermarket haul is, to me, not the correct vocabulary. I would say a grocery store. I think they say supermarket in the States, in America, but we usually just say grocery store in Canada. Supermarket is fine. Supermarket haul is a little weird, but I get what she means. And yeah, it's an okay introduction. It's not complex, but it gets the job done. Oh, April, you're saying it sounds like she's bored. I don't know. I think she sounded like pretty pretty enthusiastic at times. I thought her intonation was quite natural, which made me, that's the thing that kind of communicates emotion a lot of the time. And I found her personally, I found her intonation pretty good. So some of you are saying things like she didn't talk about the background and the foreground, so she wasn't using direction words or direction phrases. You're right about that. It's possible that maybe a higher level response would do more with that, like behind the man, or to the right of the cashier, or at the back of the store. Or if you're talking about it as a picture, you can say in the background or in the foreground. That's true. You can. And she didn't really do that. So she's kind of describing things without saying where the people are with respect to each other. And yeah, that's something that maybe could have been a little clearer. But I think she still does quite a good job of describing. Some of you are saying a lot of details were missed. Yeah, you can't talk about everything. It's impossible. It's impossible to describe every single thing as carefully as possible. And that's why you want to focus on maybe a few aspects of the scene. But I think she did a pretty good job. She talked about quite a few different aspects of the store itself, which some people don't do. Some people focus more on the people in the scene and what they're doing and how they look. This test taker kind of had a bit of a different approach, and she described some aspects of the store. That's not wrong. It just says to say what you see, and that's what she's doing. So it wasn't perfect, right? It wasn't a level 12, but this is a solid level 9 response. And let's have a look at the transcript. This might be helpful. Some of you are saying maybe her vocabulary is kind of basic or unimpressive. I think there's not a lot here that's actually wrong. Besides supermarket haul, which is something I've never heard, I don't see anything here that is wrong. She uses lots of kind of smaller or more common words to focus or clarify her meaning, like quite large, about 9 people. These are not, individually impressive words, but she is using collocations. She's using phrases quite naturally. One of them is closed, so only one register is actually open. She's using actually correctly, which is actually not very common for second language speakers. So again, even though everybody knows the word actually and open, she's putting it in the right place grammatically, and she's using it in one of the right senses. So I think that once she gets past that first sentence, she really kind of picks it up. And could her vocabulary be more complex and clear? Absolutely. There are many opportunities to increase the clarity of what you're talking about. There are 2 kids who are very excited. You might want to use a different word than excited. Picking up the watermelons, maybe they're lifting the watermelons, or they're pushing the watermelons, or they're tossing the watermelons on the floor. Maybe, I don't know what they're doing, but you might want to use some more expressive vocabulary. Sure. So yeah, I think the vocabulary is pretty general, but it's also appropriate for the situation, right? It's a grocery store, so you wouldn't be expecting a lot of high-level academic terminology here. And what she does is fine. I thought her listenability was very strong, and she certainly did answer the question. So here's our analysis. We've talked about most of these things already. So again, if you want to come back to it later and just press pause here, you can do that. You can also read it in your study pack. But I want to keep going because I want to give you a chance to try. Many of you have a lot of constructive criticisms here today. You don't think that was a good level 9? So let's see how you do. Get ready. I'm going to give you a new question, a new picture. And yes, it will stay on the screen while you speak. So we'll give you the same prep time and recording time as you would get on the test. I'll let you know when to start and stop. And again, if you want to have the real authentic experience, you can record yourself using your device. I hope you're ready. I hope you're feeling good and confident. And here we go. Your preparation time starts now. Okay, and your speaking time begins now. And that's it. Your 1 minute is up. So relax and what do you think? How was it? So did anybody who tried it have any experiences you'd like to share? Was this easier than the first one or was it more difficult? Some people like these questions because they don't have to think of any ideas really. They just have to describe what they see. Other people find it difficult to figure out what to focus on and how to describe things. So I think it's really just kind of your personality. I don't think that one is harder for everyone or easier for everyone. It's something you can practice, right? It's easy to go online and find a picture where lots of people are doing different things and then just practice talking about them. So some of you thought it was an easier picture than the grocery store. I don't know. I don't know about that. So Vanessa, I like your comment. When people are together in couples, it's easier to explain. Like when people are interacting with each other, maybe not like romantically involved, but when there's like people in groups or people together, it's, yeah, it may be easier to describe their emotions or their connections or what they're doing together. That's true. Yeah, some of you think the time was short, which maybe that means you had too much to say, which is, I think it's a better problem to have than not having enough to say. Then you just have to decide what to skip. Let's see, what else? Let's see. I'm just looking for comments that might help or questions that are good. Renata has a good question. Is it better to describe more things or to give more details? I think it depends on the person. We generally recommend focusing on a few things. Don't try to rush through and describe everything, because if you do that, you're just going to start saying things that are unclear. You won't really give yourself a chance to give details. And giving details and being specific is what's important. So I think you need to decide how best to do that. In this case, I would probably choose 3 or 4 different parts of the picture, and I would say something about each one. And I might try to explain where, you know, people are. For example, you know, way back at the ticket counter or right up front holding their popcorn. I might try to use some of those phrases of direction or location, but I would definitely not try to talk about every single person because you're just going to end up getting so general. You're not going to give yourself a chance to use descriptive language. So I think choosing 3 or 4 specific parts of the picture to spend more time on is a good strategy. But I'm not trying to say that that's the only approach, but you definitely can't describe everything. So give yourself some chances to practice and see what feels most comfortable and how you're able to express ideas most specifically and within the given time. So task 3, strategies. We want to start with an overview statement. Say where you are or what you're looking at. It doesn't need to be complex or fascinating. It just needs to introduce the situation. Then you want to focus on details. Choose a few things to talk about. Try to build a picture, and that will involve giving a lot of details, and it will also maybe involve some of those phrases of where things are. Use descriptive words, descriptive phrases. You can describe clothing, you can describe hair, you can describe facial expressions. What are the people doing, their actions? Talk about their feelings, right? If somebody looks angry or if somebody looks worried, you can talk about that. You can say why they're worried or why they're angry. And try to end with a conclusion, some sort of wrap up. Oh, it's really busy here today. It's probably for the best that you didn't come. Or, oh, I really wanted to see this movie with you. I wish you could be here. Something like that. I think for me, I always imagine I'm really in the place, but if you were looking at a picture, you would come up with a similar statement that was about looking at the picture. Okay, let's quickly have a look at speaking task 4. So we're going to go a little bit over today, but I'm hoping that we have time to at least get through the basics of task 4 so that if you have to leave in 4 minutes, you won't miss anything super important. Again, though, if you do have to leave, you're going to get the full video. So about an hour from now, that's going to show up in your inbox and you can watch the rest. Speaking task 4 is making predictions. And you will always get the same picture that you got for speaking task 3. So they are connected. And the picture is the same, but the task is different. So in this case, it's always going to ask you, in this picture, what do you think will happen next? So you're making predictions about the future. As a result, you are going to be probably using a lot of different ways of expressing future time, like tenses and phrasing that refers to the future. Just because of that's the type of task it is. The strategy here overall is to be realistic. So don't describe anything ridiculous, like 5 dinosaurs are going to jump into the grocery store and a T-Rex is going to squash all the watermelons. Don't get into stuff like that. It really has to be connected to the reality of the situation. You don't want to say anything that doesn't sound like you're coming up with it in the moment. You don't want to say something that sounds like you just thought of something that could apply to anything. So you want your predictions to be connected to what you can see happening now. And the details in the picture might help you. So you're, again, like with task 3, you won't have time to make a prediction about every single person, most likely, unless you're a very quick speaker and a very organized one. So I think a good strategy here would be kind of a similar strategy to task 3. Choose 3 or 4 things and describe what you think will happen next. Use the way they're standing or moving, the actions that they're doing, also the expressions on their faces to try to make a realistic prediction about what will happen next. Let's try one together. For example, let's have a look at the little boy and the woman in the bottom left-hand corner of the picture. Tell me what you think is going to happen next with that situation. What do you think is going to happen? And you can think about in the next 5 seconds, you can think about after they leave the store, what do you think's going to happen? With that boy and his mom. So Marcine has a sad suggestion that's probably accurate. She's not going to allow him to buy the bag of chips. She thinks the kid's trying to ask and the mom's probably going to say no. We've all been in that situation, right? Please, no, please, no. April is more optimistic and is saying that in fact the mom will buy her son what he wants. So we don't know, right? Neither one of those predictions is wrong. We don't know. So either you could say either and it would be fine. We have a lot of things he's trying to convince the mom to buy the bag of chips, but she's going to say no and he won't be happy about it. Yeah, so that's Kanika's suggestion. And Kanika, you would want to express that in future tenses, right? Not in present. Most of you think he's not going to buy it. Juliana is suggesting he's going to throw a tantrum because she doesn't want to buy the chips. He's going to freak out. Possible, right? So a lot of you are making these similar kinds of suggestions, but this is what you want to do, right? And just kind of go around, move through the store and choose some others. Think about these kids in the background, in the middle. What's going to happen with these watermelons? Maybe they're going to knock one loose and they're all going to roll down and start breaking and the dad's going to get angry. We don't know, right? So your predictions can be funny or interesting, but they really don't have to be. They just can be normal things, right? Oh, I think that the people who are at the checkout counter right now are going to pay for their groceries and go home and have a good rest of their day, right? That's not interesting. It's just a statement and it's a prediction. So you just want to make some realistic predictions about some of the stuff, and you don't have to talk about the same things you talked about for task 3. So in task 3, if you didn't talk about the kids with the watermelons, that doesn't mean you can't talk about them for task 4, right? You don't have to do like a continuation of what you said for task 3. It's the same picture, but it's an entirely new question. So let's have a listen. I'm going to play you a couple of different ones. So we'll first listen to this one, and you can let me know what you think. And then I have kind of a bonus one at the end. So again, I'm going to let the picture stay on the screen while you listen, and you can tell me what you think in the comments box.
From what I can see in this picture, what will happen next is the customer who is having the barcode item scan barcode by the cashier, and the service staff would pay for the item and would be stepping out of the store. The father or the elderly companion with the 2 children playing with the watermelons was walking towards them. He would probably tell them not to play with those watermelons and not to play with the fruit. One lady that is driving her cart between aisle 7 and another number, she would probably go and shop and put some stuff in her cart. The young boy wearing blue shirt who is showing an item to his father, one possibility is that his father would allow to either buy that item or convince him for something else. Same thing goes for this other young child who's showing something to his mother, a package.
Another test taker got cut off. So any thoughts on this one? We're going to go through this one kind of quickly. Mihir, yes, that's a good question. Mihir's asking, is it advisable to use Canadian vocabulary over British? It is. All the raters are Canadian. And so if there's a lot of British vocabulary in a response, honestly, depending on the rater, some of them might not even understand it. If, you know, one word here and there is probably not going to be an issue, but if it's constant, like red sauce, brown sauce, trolley, like they're just going to be confused. And it's also going to come across as, yeah, it's just every country that speaks English has different ways to express things. And so the raters are kind of tuned into Canadian vocabulary. So if you know the word in Canada, always go with that. That's my advice. What do you think of that response? Most of you thought it was pretty good. We have a guess of 9, a guess of 10. It is a level 9. So that response got a level 9. I think he said a lot. He spoke so quickly. And you can see that from the amount of words on this slide. He got a lot of stuff into that 60 seconds. Personally, I think slowing down his speech might have helped a little bit with some of the listenability issues that you're noticing, like there being some words that you actually can't understand. He's just racing through and he's trying to describe everything. He does a pretty good job. He also stumbles a little sometimes because I think he's talking or thinking too quickly. Like he does with so the father or the elderly, he's just trying to say everything as fast as possible. And he does okay. It's quite listenable, right? It's intelligible, and he does use some good vocabulary. He gets a lot of information in. He certainly makes a lot of predictions. I think his sentence structure is quite good. He uses a decent variety of different ways of expressing the future. He doesn't always use will, for example. He uses things like going to, or one possibility is. He uses, let's see, I think will probably, he says a couple times, which is good to add a probability term in there. You can use things like probably or likely or most likely or I'm pretty sure or I bet, right? There's lots of words and phrases that express probability or certainty that you could incorporate into this too, as well as different verb tenses to express the future. So this was a level 9 overall. Yeah, he did. He almost described everybody. And here is our analysis. Again, we don't have time to kind of spend on it, but this is a lot of what we have talked about and a lot of the things that you noticed. And this is why this test taker received a level 9. So I want to play one more thing for you. And I think it's this one. Yes, so this is a bonus response. Some of you are asking for some higher level responses. So this is a level 12. We're not going to discuss it in detail. I'm just going to play it for you so that you can hear and also see. In fact, I think I'll play this one with the transcript so you can see the structure of the language and the variety. So this is a level 12, and you can probably see and hear why pretty quickly here.
Start speaking now.
So in terms of what's likely to happen next, there is a woman who's wearing a purple sweater and white pants, and her cart is empty. So I would imagine that she will probably fill her cart as she goes through the store. The couple who's currently paying will exit the store. I don't believe that the red-headed child trying to persuade his mother to buy potato chips or some other kind of goodie will be successful. She actually looks quite stern, whereas the two kids in the middle do seem like they are more likely to buy sweets. I also think that what's likely to happen with the child, that the two kids looking at the watermelons are most likely going to try and pick one up and have several of the watermelons fall out of the display because they look quite small as compared to the very, very large watermelons that they're trying to purchase. So lots of activity in the grocery store today.
So that's a 12. I think you can hear why. She definitely said a lot of different things. You can see, I like to show this one with the transcript because you can really see the variety in her sentence structure. You can see things like whereas, you can see her comparing one thing to another. You can see many different future constructions, lots of different expressions of probability. And her listenability, of course, was quite good. I think she's from the southern United States. She's not Canadian, but she sounds American to me. So yeah, and that is kind of, I think, sort of comparable to the level 9 that we listened to with its speed, but this test taker is a little more successful speaking at that speed because her language skills are higher. So she's able to pull that off, that fast talking, in a way that not everybody could. So that was a level 12. So just to finish off our discussion of task 4, use your imagination, but don't be crazy, right? Don't be ridiculous. Try to be realistic. Ask yourself what actions, what things might the people do next, and you can think about their surroundings, where they are, what they're holding, what they're looking at, what they can see to help you think of ideas. Think about actions and also feelings. You can talk about how people feel. For example, the boy, if you think he's not going to get those chips, how's he going to feel? What's he going to do, right? What's going to happen next? Create that transition into the future. You can be creative and original, but it's not necessary. You can make very kind of everyday predictions, and that's absolutely okay. Be realistic and be descriptive. I think those are the main pieces of advice here. Okay, so we're over time. We're going to take about another 5 minutes to walk through some of the materials that we have available and resources if you want to continue your test prep. We'll take another 5 minutes or so maybe here. The first thing is that we have 2 free practice tests. They used to be separate, but now they come in a bundle of 2. So if you have the separate ones, this is the same practice test, just in a different format. There's 2 of them, and something that's new about them is that the answer keys are now going to show not only the correct answers for listening and reading, but also your choices. So that was not the case before, but it is the case now. And they include listening transcripts, which you'll never see on the test, but can be very helpful as a resource to practice with. We have lots more webinars if you are here for the first time and would like to check out some of the others. Tomorrow we'll have lesson 2 of Speaking Pro, so Brandy will talk about tasks 5 through 8. We have Writing Pro, Target 9 Plus, which I think is happening on Friday. I think that's this week. So I'll be doing Writing Pro. We also have a Speaking Pro Target 5 and a Writing Pro Target 5. So if you are kind of a lower level English user, you might find those helpful, or even if you just want to learn the basics. Speaking Pro Target 5 goes through all 8 tasks in one lesson. And so it has some questions you can practice and things like that. And Writing Pro Target 5 is where we go into the basics of how to structure and what you need to have in an email and a survey response. So if you're interested in that, you can attend the webinar live, or you can check it out on our YouTube channel. And we have recordings of all of our webinars posted there so that people who aren't able to come at the times that we have them are able to still get that information. And I'll mention that these webinars are always the same. So for example, if you sign up for Speaking Pro Target 9 Lesson 1 next month, it's going to be the exact same slides and me talking about them. It's not going to have new information or new samples. It's not like a class. We repeat them every month because new people are taking the test every month. And so new people need that information. So you're welcome to attend these as many times as you like, but the content isn't going to change. And if you're looking for additional content, there's some different places you can get that. One is our CELPIP practice tests. So in addition to the 2 free ones, we have 7 sets of paid practice tests. Each set includes 2 tests, and in each set, there's going to be 1 test that comes with sample responses for writing and speaking. So if you want more sample responses, that's one place where you can get them. We have some other materials available. We have CELPIP Accelerate, which is an online study program. It goes through 1 complete practice test from beginning to end. So you get all of the questions and material from 1 practice test with tons of videos, with both of them together, like 100 videos probably. So if you like to learn through videos, this one is probably the best choice. They're divided into reading, writing, and listening and speaking because some people are taking the CELPIP General LS test. They only need to do listening and speaking, and so they don't need the whole thing. So a lot of our products are divided that way. If you get the full set, it's got all of the 4 skills and all of the practice test material, tons of quizzes, lots of downloads. I think this is our most popular product, and there's probably good reasons for that. That's the one the test takers really like the most. We have practice and analysis, which is kind of a little more old school, less technologically interesting. I don't think it has any videos. Again, it's designed around 1 full practice test, and it includes the material from 1 full test and lots of additional information, but it's not in video form, it's information that you read. And the main thing that it does is that it will analyze why each answer for listening and reading is right or wrong. So it gives you that insight into how you can get to the correct answers for those parts of the test. We are not shipping books right now because we're all still working from home, but there are a couple of our resources that are available as ebooks. And those are our study guides, which are 2 books, again, divided into those 2 parts. You can buy just one or you can buy both. And together, they will walk you through a complete practice test with lots of additional information and activities. So they're kind of like the book version of Accelerate in that sense. They're going to go through a complete test and give you a lot of the same information, but in a different format. And Common CELPIP Errors is also available as an ebook. So that's the 3rd one you see on the screen here. And this is a little handy guide to some of the most common mistakes that test takers make on the CELPIP test, and really just in English in general. A lot of them are related to grammar. Some of them are related specifically to speaking. And then some of them relate to writing specifically, like punctuation. For each one, it's going to describe the mistake and it's going to give you an opportunity to practice. So that is another opportunity that you have there to do some practice. And I will finish here with our contact information. So if anyone does need to get in touch with our customer service, here's how you can do that. And the last thing I really want to mention is that our YouTube channel, we are now showing live streams called CELPIP Live. We're on season 2 now, and our schedule for them is every second Tuesday at 9:30 Vancouver time. We just had one yesterday, and so the next one will be August 25th. And they're always posted as recordings afterwards, so you can go through and have a look at the ones that you think will be interesting to you. And the reason why I specifically want to mention this is that for anyone who's looking for new sample responses, I did a couple episodes and Brandy has done some related to analyzing sample speaking and writing responses. So if you go into our YouTube channel, CELPIP Official, you'll be able to find those recordings and you can have a look at those new samples and the analysis that we do. You can also join the live streams live and you can ask your questions and you can chat as the presenters are presenting. So feel free to join those every second Tuesday. Okay, I'm over time, but I'm done. And I'm gonna turn off my mic now. I hope that this has been helpful and answered some of your questions and you feel a little better about the speaking test now. I will talk to some of you again tomorrow because I will be answering questions while Brandy is presenting. So I won't see, but I'll talk to some of you again very soon. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your day and have a great test if your test is coming up. We wish you the best of luck. So goodbye from me and Brandy. I'm gonna shut it down now.